Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Scott Luton and Greg White with you here on Supply Chain Now. Welcome to today's live stream. Gregory, how are we doing today?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was still piecing in. Some people only piece out. I piece in. I am doing well. Scott and I
Yeah.
had a what should we call it? Wholesome. Let's call it wholesome weekend,
Yes. Very
right?
wholesome weekend.
Right. We
That's
spent
right.
the weekend with little kids, little football, PG movies, and G movies. Man, there are some good G movies, by the way. Right, and no booze,
That's right. It's a
nothing
good,
from any
clean living.
colored bottles. Yes,
Right. So we got to make up for it this week, Greg. So,
I'm going to start today.
okay. We're
Actually,
going to
I'm
start
not.
for lunchtime.
Yeah, actually, I'm not. You know, we were just talking about this. I'm not one of those guys who sits around and drinks beer while watching football.
Uh,
I take it way too seriously, and I don't want to be impaired as I'm analyzing future potential competitors. Right?
yeah. I've seen you in
Like I
action.
can do anything about it, but I want to know
I've seen you in
how to beat
action.
the Cowboys.
And I,
Yes.
I can vouch for that, a very smart and disciplined approach. But speaking of smart and disciplined approach, or at least half of that formula, we got a real smart show here today. We got 4 stories as we walk through the buzz, a live show that comes at you every Monday at 12 noon Eastern time. 4
Mhm.
stories that come from across the world of global business, a variety of news and developments. And Greg, here's our challenge. So, to folks that are listening live or maybe viewing us live, perhaps, first off, we want to hear from you. So, give us your take and your comments on the stories as we walk through and give you our take throughout the show. And secondly, Greg, if folks are tuned in live, hey, don't forget to like or share or subscribe to our platform, right?
Absolutely. Hey, I have one more thing.
Okay.
Big announcement. Big announcement.
Bum-bum-bum.
This is the most popular show in supply chain, right? As identified by all the authorities, Chartable and blah, 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 whoever else measures that. And you know what we're going to do, Scott? We're going to offer sponsorship of The Buzz. So
Ah,
you guys might have noticed that we took supply chain out of the name of The Buzz. It's just The Buzz because we do a digital Transformers edition as well, which isn't necessarily supply chain.
right.
Just a little inkling. But anyway, we're going to offer a sponsorship. So the title, Your Company Here,
In
right?
lights.
The Buzz, brought to you by.
That's right. That is right. I like that. I like the
Yeah.
picture you paint,
So if you're
Greg.
interested in that, well, you know how to find me.
That's right.
LinkedIn.
Awesome. Awesome. This is an incredible journey. Can't wait for what's ahead. Big, big, big
Who would
things
be
coming.
interested in who's interested in that, right? I mean, who would like to be attached to that, right?
Yeah. Well, the arms are going, the hands are going up. So you'll have some
Oh, I need to
conversations
look.
already
Yeah,
teed
right.
up.
Sorry, I'm not monitoring the comments.
Finger on the pulse.
Yeah,
Okay. But folks, if you're listening to today's buzz via podcast replay, hey, you ought to consider joining us live on LinkedIn or YouTube or other social media channel of your choosing, as we'd love to hear from you throughout the show as well. Okay. So, Greg, before we get into some resources, we've got a
mm.
neat little shot here from 2 of our dear team members. And this is Catherine on the
Oh
left.
man, they probably didn't know you were going to put it on. Oh, that's pretty.
I'll- this is so we hear. So Catherine and her mother made a trip to Birmingham, like a girls' weekend. They hooked up with Catherine. They had great coffee, conversation, great food, and evidently this was at a place called Juniper, Greg, and they were telling us all about the food, not the drinks.
No,
And we
no, Juniper was drinks.
oh, okay, that's right,
Juniper was the gin bar, right?
that's right.
Hence Juniper. Juniper. I forgot the name of the tapas place that they went, but that tapas
Yes,
place that they went. Got to be very careful there. But and they gave us pictures, which I don't think we shared here.
right.
But wow, the food looks fantastic. Birmingham, right? I mean, I'm impressed with
Yes.
Birmingham's culinary gifts.
Right. That's right. And Greg, we've got some roots back to Birmingham, way back when, if you recall, UAB
The
in
Root, yeah,
particular.
the very first show I was ever on.
That's right.
Shared a mic with one of the guests,
That's right.
right?
I couldn't
We only
fit
had so many mics, isn't it? Man, talk about the old days, right?
couldn't fit nothing else into the Honda back in the day. All right. So Oven Bird was the other restaurant in
Oven Bird,
Birmingham
yes.
that they went to and raved about. So y'all check that out. Okay. Also, resources. Before we get going here, I want to share a couple other resources here. Greg offered a great With That Said over the weekend. Really focus on the front end on what we're seeing in the Middle East, and um, a lot of it goes without saying, tons of tragedy, tons of loss. The uncertain times just became a lot more uncertain in terms of what lies ahead. But by focusing on, as we get through this period, certainly our thoughts and prayers and our mindset are with many of the families that have suffered loss or are working through a very frightening set of circumstances. Greg, your final thought here on what we're seeing.
Yeah. Final thought. How about just a quick thought?
Sure.
There's plenty of loss to go around. This is a problem that's literally been going on for 3,600 years. And we're not going to solve it with protests at Harvard or in the streets or making silly statements about who's in the wrong or who's in the right here. This will probably end in a way that none of us are going to like, and it's probably not going to end at the time of this conflict. So this is bigger than all of us. Literally goes back to the Bible. And yeah, I mean, I think everybody should probably know when to stay in their lane. And the only thing we can do is empathize and pray for the people who are being affected on both sides.
That's right. Well said, Greg. So, folks, check out this edition where we are actually offered up some great tips for navigating and protecting your mental health, whether you've got friends and family there impacted, or if you're just trying to get through the all the news. So check out With That Said. We put it out just about every week. And you'll also find, beyond that, on a less important note, you'll find some of our upcoming events and some other resources. Speaking of resources, tomorrow, folks can join us for a live stream focused on how carriers deliver last mile excellence. Excellence, not mediocrity, Greg. Excellence. Should be a great show again with Bart, Michael, and John, huh?
Yeah, there's certain givens with last mile. Be on time, right? Be complete. Be in good shape. Wow, I have been getting some deliveries lately. I got a crushed bottle of hand soap.
Okay.
And it was gross. Honestly, it was all squished out. And oh my God. And guess who it was? It was the largest online retailer in America.
Wow, how about that?
Who disappointed, but the the old bottle's on its way back, and the new bottle's on its way again. Hopefully, they learned a little bit of something about however they shipped it from that experience.
Well, Greg, that's a little foreshadowing.
Quick, in good shape, and on time. On time. Yep. Those are all givens.
Yes.
Excellence is about doing all that at a good value, at a predictable, right, and a sensible value.
So we're going to touch on one aspect of that later in the show as we talk about packaging for the first time in a little while. So stay tuned for that. All right. Got a lot of great folks already tuned in. Leah Luton from Aiken, South Kakalaki. Great to see you, Mom. Love you. Gino is back with us here. Good morning to you. Nanda. First time Nanda's been with us in a little while. Nanda, hope this finds you well, my friend. And we also drop the links to a couple of those resources from With That Said, as well as the link to tomorrow's live stream at 12 noon. So y'all join us for that too. All right, Greg, are you ready to get into the first of several stories here today?
I'm ready.
Ready?
Boy, am I looking forward to this first one.
Okay. Well, I can't wait to get your take here. So I'm going to unpack it, and then we're going to get Greg White's patented um, nuclear hot take. Here we go. So we're going to give a quick update on the automotive strike situation, the ongoing automotive strike situation. So the United Auto Workers, UAW, expanded its labor strike last week, particularly in its action against the Ford Motor Company. Over the weekend, the UAW said that they had expected a revised and improved labor offer from Ford, but they say they got the same one they received a couple weeks ago. So 8,700, that's right, almost 9,000 UAW union members went on strike at a Ford truck plant in Kentucky. Greg, we were talking pre-show. They call this thing Kentucky Truck Plant, KTP, in Louisville. But that's not just any plant, evidently. It's Ford's biggest manufacturing plant in the world, where it makes its popular Ford Super Duty pickup trucks, the Lincoln Navigator, and the Ford Expedition. With this expansion, about 22% of all UAW workers at the Big Three are now on strike. Thus far, on the other side of the coin, so to speak, the automakers have more than doubled the wage hike offers that they originally submitted, and they have agreed to raise future wages to account for inflation, and they've agreed to better pay for temp workers, but that is still falling short of UAW's leadership's demands. So, Greg, your thoughts?
This is spit in the wind at this point. So many of these jobs are going to be automated out of humans. I just feel like this is kind of, and I think I said this the last time we talked about this, this is kind of a last cash grab for that last generation that actually wants these jobs and still does them manually, and mostly does them manually out of obligation to those workers by the automakers. And this is the thanks that they get. So I mean, it's not like the automakers are charitable organizations and doing kind thing for these workers, but they are paid a more than fair wage for the work that they do. It's funny because I'm reading this book by Ray Dalio, and it is an extensive amount of research. It is called, oh my gosh, it is. Sorry. The title is so long. Sorry.
Ray Dalio. Is that the name of the author?
Ray Dalio. How to survive the changing world order or something like that.
Okay.
And here it is. Principles for dealing with the changing world order.
Okay.
And this is part of a cycle of countries that become superpowers and are the leading currency in the world and that sort of thing. And this is evidence of stage 4, which is kind of the tailing of that superpower into inevitable oblivion. And it is this demand for excessive wages in society, which of course we are, because we're rich and we spend a lot of our money on, rich relative to other nations, and we spend a lot of our money on frivolous rather than productive things. And that, anyway, this really has me thinking, this and many other topics has me thinking about that. So there you have it. I'm sorry, that was not very cogent, Scott, and
real optimistic read.
But I think that it is kind of the stage that the U.S. is in right now. So as India and China are coming up as economic powers, they'll inevitably take our place. Most of us here listening to this will be probably dead by that point, but we're about 70% of the way through that cycle. So, this is just further evidence. And the interesting thing about the book, Scott, I'm sorry, is that the inevitability of this is incredible. Literally, Ray Dalio has studied 3,600 years of history and seen this happen over and over and over again, and not just in English speaking or European areas. It's happened in China several times. It's happened, over thousands and thousands of years. It's happened with the Romans, probably most famously, but with the Ming Dynasty and the Tang Dynasty as well, and others. So
Did he happen to study the Romulans and the Klingon dynasties as well?
He did. Yes, that was during the 60s.
Sorry, little
That
Trekkie
run was
joke.
very short. It was only like 4 seasons, right?
Right. Well, kidding aside, sounds like a great read, and I just googled it as you were talking about it.
It's a commitment, let me tell you. It's something like I think it's something like 14 hours worth of reading.
Wow.
So,
Okay. Well, we expect the full-fledged book review and report once you get through Ray Dalio. Yeah,
yeah,
Dalio,
Ray
right?
Dalio, the founder and CEO of Bridgewater Associates, the largest
Oh,
private
okay.
equity group on the planet.
Very cool. Y'all check it out. You can get it on, it looks
Not
like
always
Amazon.
popular, but boy, and I mean, I have had my issues with Ray Dalio's point of view in the past,
Mm,
but it is inarguable that he is the most well researched of anyone who's espousing their whatever point of
okay.
view out there.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Y'all check that out. In the meantime, hey, Juan, appreciate the kind words here via LinkedIn. And we appreciate the encouragement. Hey, keep
I
the
wonder if he's related to the great punter for I can't remember which NFL team Bajorquez, right?
okay. Well, Juan, let us know. You have any NFL talent in your family tree? Let us know. But regardless, great to have you here. Appreciate the feedback and let us know what you think
Yeah.
as we work our way through these stories. Speaking of, Greg, moving right along to our second story, we're going to stick with the workforce, but we're going to talk more about the warehousing industry. Now, for years now, Greg, this is nothing new for any of our listeners that's been with us for 4 or 5 years. We've talked about the tight labor market in the warehouse space
Mhm.
forever, long before it became headlines. Of course, it is just one of the big drivers of automation, and labor challenges continue to impact how warehouses recruit the human element that many still need, right? Eventually, as Greg has thrown out there, they'll be fully autonomous with robots rolling around all the time, maybe humans sitting back just pressing buttons. Who knows? But right now, there's still that human element is still important in many logistics facilities out there. So, in this report from the Wall Street Journal, we see that logistics operations in general are looking to compete more and more for gig workers, and are also more and more willing to provide the flexibility they often require. That latter part is in my view the bigger news here. They've been competing for all sorts of workers forever. That's not new, but I love the flexibility that these employers are offering. So according to a survey by our friends at EmployBridge, which also was in this WSJ article, the portion of logistics workers who are choosing and are able to choose which 4 to 6 hour shift they want to work, well, according to the survey data, that segment rose from 15% in 2021 to 21% in 2023. Speaking of flexibility for the workforce, PepsiCo, we're all familiar with that, right? Comes in a close second to the tastiest beverage in the known universe. PepsiCo, though, is testing an app now that would allow their warehouse workers to do things like swap shifts from the convenience of their
Ooh, that's
smartphone.
nifty.
I like that, huh?
Yeah.
All right. So, Greg, as we're talking about warehouses shifting gears or getting more serious and more practical about offering flexibility to the workforce that they can recruit and attract, your thoughts?
This has been a challenge since before COVID, right? And COVID did not help because I mean, if you think about how some companies like Amazon have planned for this, they had actual RV parks at a lot of their facilities, and nomads, right? Boomer nomads who were
Mm,
traveling around the country in their RVs would stop in and stay for a month in a town and work at Amazon, or maybe other facilities do this too. It's just Amazon's most famous for it, and then move on. So, and they have for many years at Amazon. I only know this because remember my previous company
sure.
was a company that serviced Amazon. So, um, they have used temporary workers, which um, more than gig workers provides you with some really interesting story. Just
Mm,
enough money to buy the next hit of meth, and then they are done with their shift. That kind of thing. So, and as we have said, less comically and more common, people are staying away from these jobs in droves.
Mm.
These incoming generations are just staying away from these jobs, the dark, dirty, dull, and dangerous jobs that we've talked about so often. And it's a real challenge and has been for many, many years, going on a decade now, I think. And so they've got to do something. Flexibility, automation, some combinations of automation and flexibility, gig workers, whatever,
Yeah.
right? Just to get it done. Because at this point, they are desperate to field humans to do the human jobs in these facilities. And remember, at a lot of these companies, they are provisioning with automation. And yet, I mean, there are Amazon facilities that are 2, 3, 4 million square feet that have fewer than 24 humans working in them. So they are provisioning for this, and yet still they are tens of thousands of humans short. So I think an interesting campaign, as interesting as this flexibility for the folks at Amazon. Sorry, not to make this an ad. It's just that they do ads during football, which I watched this weekend.
It's top of mind.
Did I mention? Yeah, did I mention without a single beer? And I saw an ad about a guy who joined Amazon as a warehouse worker and now runs one of their server facilities.
Love it.
And a lady who started as a warehouse worker and now is in their UI UX experience organization. So I mean, there are opportunities outside the warehouse, and they want you to elevate to those positions. So I think there is some legitimate, depending on the company you're working for. I'm not saying that's only an opportunity at Amazon, but you could explore what are the opportunities for elevation if I take this warehouse job. And I think that would be a great opportunity for a lot of young people because, I've known warehouse workers who took over companies, and there is nothing like the experience of knowing how an organization operates every single day to elevate your ability to run a company. Right? And having that experience is so incredibly valuable. The equivalent of working in the mailroom,
right?
In the old days,
right? I was just watching Seinfeld's lots of repeat episodes. Comedy Central now runs Seinfeld almost as often as they run The Office. And there's a great episode where they promoted someone up from the mailroom and hilarity ensued. I can't remember the name of the gentleman. You probably know the episode I'm talking about. Anyway, but kidding aside, I'm with you. You never know what massive opportunities you're going to have by getting your foot in the door and learning the operational side of some of these businesses. And I love those two stories you featured, Greg, that now the folks started there on the front line and now they're leading and doing bigger things. That's companies.
I was encouraged by that. And I don't even want a job at Amazon, right? I was encouraged by that. I thought, wow, who even thinks of that anymore, that's possible, right?
I love those stories. And I like this, going back to where we started here with this piece, my favorite part of this is the flexibility that the newfound flexibility that these companies are really already giving or looking to give more to the workforce. That should help with recruiting on a variety of levels. All right, moving right along. So quick blurb about this Thursday. Let's see, the 19th. That's this Thursday, right? 19th.
Yes, sir.
We have got a live webinar with our friends from Enable, backed by popular demand. From numbers to strategy, how finance drives data-driven supply chains. Greg, if you leave finance out of the conversation, you do so at your own peril, right?
Amen. It turns out, Scott, that people want to be paid for the stuff that they send you.
Right. How about that?
What more needs to be said?
Late breaking news. Well, folks, join us for the live session on the 19th, this Thursday at 12 noon. Not only do we have Nick Rose there from Enable, but we've got a great finance business leader from a company called GameStop, which I bet we've all heard of, right? So check that out. All right, Greg, getting back into, and I'm trying to decipher. Oh, this is okay. So Gino referenced a movie, but
Nomadland. Yes.
yeah. So this threw me off a little bit, but he's talking about the movie Nomadland, which was a good one. And I
have
think
not
Greg,
seen it, but I wanted to. You put these things on your list,
right?
and then you forget about it. Yeah.
Well, so I saw that. It's probably been about a year and a half ago, but he's talking about your point about, driving from place to place and
Yes.
living kind of on the road. I can't remember her name right off, but we all know the movie Fargo, one of all of our favorites. The chef, or not the chef, the sheriff deputy. Who is that female actor that plays the infamous
Frances McDormand?
Yes, Frances McDormand plays in this Nomadland movie that Gina pointed out. Y'all check it out because I think it's a great movie. I got to watch it again. All right, so moving
That's
right.
a good call, Gino. Thank
Isn't
you.
it?
I need to
Man,
put that on. I need to move that to the top of the list.
top of the list, top of the long list. Okay, so Greg, let's see. Let's get into our third story here today. Now, folks, don't leave us now. I know packaging for many may not be exciting, but you know what? I would argue that packaging impacts your life, no pun intended, more than you've ever thought about subconsciously. And we're going to get into some of this. So this is an interesting article from our friends at Packaging Dive. Greg, that's a new of the Dive.
Is that right?
Yeah, Packaging Dive's new one for me. All right, so this article focuses on key takeaways from conversations at EPAC conference up in Chicago last week. Now, most folks know that sustainability, of course, is a big focus, not just with packaging, but across the board. It's also a big focus when it comes to packaging design. However, other factors are equally as important, such as protective traits, because you know that thing's going to be slung into this van and thrown over here and thrown on the porch. So protective traits, marketing appeal, how's that look? Especially with the packaging you'll find on consumer goods sitting on those shelves. Of course, cost factors big as well. Now, one packaging expert noted that older folks are using e-commerce more and more. So packaging considerations now include, is it easy to open? Now, Greg, I would argue that that's not just, I can't get into some of these packages, Dave. I've got to get the heavy-duty scissors to get through some of these shell cases. But back to more sustainable packaging and the elimination of waste. I love this. That furniture company, Lovesac, perhaps y'all have seen the commercials. Well, they print all the assembly instructions right there on the box so they can eliminate the printed paper versions. And Greg, some of these things come with like 272-page encyclopedias that covers every address or every concern you may ever need about any product. They print all of that right there on the boxes. So, Greg, your thoughts when it comes to some of these packaging trends or packaging topics or you name it?
Well, I've got news for you, Scott. We are the older people that they are talking about. Right? You always think it's your, let's say grandparents, since your mom is watching this. You always think it's your grandparents that they're talking about, but we are slowly becoming those older people. I'm thinking, that as baby boomers age out of the workforce,
right,
and the planet slowly, the Generation X, which most people have forgotten exists, we become the old people. So, and we're going to be cranky old people.
Yes, we are.
Get off my lawn. But yeah, I think about that. I would think about things like, is it easy opening? I think about every time I throw a box in a recycling bin, I'm thinking, why couldn't we just reuse this box?
Right.
I mean, you just feel like there ought to be a way to get the box back without it having to go through the processing to be built into another type of box, right?
Right.
And it is true, man. people get deliveries like never before. So my daughter just moved into a new apartment complex, and they have lockers for delivery of stuff, not just a bank of mailboxes, but lockers for delivery of the stuff that you order for e-commerce of every size and shape.
How about
So,
that?
well, I mean, you do away with other rooms like the server room and whatever else, and you use it for that stuff, I guess.
Huh.
So anyway, yeah, it is. E-commerce is still growing, right? And I think, what did they predict for this holiday season? $27
Oh
billion,
gosh,
something like that.
something like that.
I remember when it broke $1 billion, which also makes me sound old. Oh my gosh, it wasn't that long ago, folks. But yeah, I mean, I think it's time to be thinking about not just sustainability generally, but sustainability specifically, and how we can even improve on that. But yes, there's so many things to think about with packaging. How does it look? How does it make you feel?
Right.
It's a tough shtick.
That's right. And I would argue that it's all, despite the fact that it touches all of us, to your point, multiple times a day in some cases, but it's also kind of under recognized out in industry is what I would put it. Kind of like reverse logistics, I think, although we're slowly but surely changing that. There's one thing. Oh, I know what I was going to say. You never know what Greg's going to say after he says something like, well, I got news for you, Scott, but you know it's going to be good, and buckle in. And as Gino agrees with us, yes, we are the old folks. And it's so funny. I read that. I'm thinking like other people, they are talking about us, Greg. Dadgum. All
Yeah,
right. All right.
right.
So
Well, you haven't aged out of the most prolific, right? 30. What did they call it? 26 to 49, whatever that age group is when people are most
I
likely to
got
spend dollars.
you.
You
Okay.
have not aged out of that yet, so
I,
congratulations. You're still important.
I
The rest of
still
us
got
have been forgotten.
I got a couple of years. Got a couple of years. That's good. That's good to know. Makes me feel better. But long live Gen X. And yes, we are going to be a cranky generation as we age. That's a good point, Greg. All right. Let's talk candy. Let's talk candy. So one of my least favorite holiday, not one of them,
Oh, I
but
thought you
my
were going to say
least.
kid. I thought you were going to say one of my kids, and then when you said least favorite,
Oh, I was about to
you're about
intermix
to
things.
learn something, folks.
My least favorite holiday, yep, is Halloween, no doubt about it. But hey, a lot of folks love Halloween. And Greg, especially the folks that make candy, because as CNBC reports here, Halloween is candy's biggest holiday.
Yeah.
And as John Gold and our friends over at the National Retail Federation, good old NRF, are projecting, consumers are expected to spend $3.6 billion on Halloween candy this year, up from $3.1 billion last year, partially inflation fueled, of course. 48%. Now, here's something I should have expected. But I got a really big, all transparency. I got a really big bag of candy this past weekend at Costco. And as Amanda got home from her trip, I said, "Hey, I've got the Halloween candy knocked out." And she said, "Oh no, you got it too early. We'll be lucky. We're lucky between all the kids to still have that come Halloween candy, but come Halloween week. But 48% of Halloween candy sales take place during that last week of October. So by my rough math, Greg, that is half of 3.6. That's $1.8 billion of candy on that last week of October. A lot of
Wow.
folks are familiar with Mars. Big old, and I've got a trivia question coming at you, Greg, next. But you know, the Mars brand, Snickers, Twix, Three Musketeers, M&Ms, all that stuff. Well, Mars, that they don't release their revenue, the privately held company, but they had $45 billion in annual revenue in 2021, to give you perspective. Really big company, right? Halloween planning at Mars is a 2-year affair. So when Mars sits down with its suppliers, customers, team members, you name it, look at trends across the confectionery arts in 2021, well, we see those decisions come to fruition in 2023. Speaking of planning, Mars as a company exceeded its production targets for this Halloween season. How about that? Gold star. So there should be
Well,
plenty.
I don't know if you remember, Scott, earlier in the year, remember they were talking about how they were going to struggle to meet demand.
That's where my brain went as I was reading through this.
Right.
But the good news, folks, plenty of candy should be available for that army of last minute shoppers that clearly we all are. All right, here's the question I was going to ask you, Greg. All this candy talk's bringing tears in my eyes. Do you know the best selling Halloween candy? And to give you a little tip, little hint, look at that candy pile.
Not sorry.
Yes, Hershey's Reese's Cups, the number one best-selling Halloween candy. Coming in second is my beloved Snickers. Greg, before I bring you in, Mom is a big Milk Dud fan. I am too,
Milk
Mom.
Duds.
Yeah, but the thing is, here's a problem, Greg, with Milk Duds. Man,
they get old fast,
and they are terrible on your teeth, as is probably much candy. But your thoughts
I
here,
bet your
Greg?
mom also loves Baby Ruth, which also gets the chocolate gets chalky and old really fast.
Yes,
but, man, when it's good, it's good.
I'm with you.
All right, so Mom, I want you to try. My favorite is Milky Way Midnight, a dark chocolate Milky Way, but only the minis. And the Chiefs remembered that. So when I was at the game Thursday, we're members of a little club inside the stadium. They had the Milky Way Midnights and a bunch of other stuff that I didn't care about, and I was digging through the thing to find Milky Way Midnights, and I probably had 10 of them.
Oh man! Oh, okay. Well, so two thoughts there, Greg. First off, I love dark chocolate, but secondly, how cool is that for them to remember your favorite candy preferences?
Well, again, not for the whole last week, just the last weekend, and that little bit of treat fell under the guise of the bartenders who.
Oh, I get it now.
They know me pretty well.
Well, do they? So, talking Halloween candy, there's a variety of what was in that read from our friends at CNBC that kind of surprised me a little bit. Are you surprised at the big, 3.1 billion to 3.6 billion in the candy spend year over year?
I wouldn't. I don't know. Probably yes. I wouldn't know what number to put on it. Right. We live in a neighborhood that has very few homes in it, so not a lot of people come into it. But I mean, if you think about how trick-or-treating is done a lot of places now, like I love that churches and schools or whoever they allow you to like kind of tailgate. So people don't do it from their homes. The kids come to a parking lot and they go car to car to car, which, oh my gosh, when I was a kid, if they had done it like that,
fish in a barrel.
Fewer steps. Talk about efficiency. Fewer steps per piece of candy. I mean, it is the ultimate junk food supply chain. Right? What a design. Whoever thought of that is genius.
Trunk or treat.
Yeah. Trunk or treat. That's right. That's right. That's what they call it. Yeah.
But I just warn you from first-hand experience, and Amanda and Catherine behind the scenes appreciate what y'all do. Me and Amanda were manning our trunk one of those trunk or treat times a couple years ago. And if you're one of the first trunks to run out of candy, you better watch out. You better have protective gear on. There's going to be riots. There's going to be demonstrations. You better close up shop.
Gosh, I didn't even think about that.
Yep.
And there's no escape because the parking lot's full.
Right. Oh gosh. It
you can't turn off the lights. I mean, they're walking right there next to you. Oh my
yes.
God.
There's
it's not like they got to walk up from the street. Don't go to that house. Their porch lights out.
Right. There's a few things that make Halloween worse for those of us that don't like it, and that is attending those trunk or treats and running out of candy. But. All right, Greg. The other thing you brought up, because we've reported numerous times, not just this year but other years, about the demand and is there going to be enough candy out there? And oftentimes, as we talked about, that's kind of over-reported. It's not. There's not always a ton of truth there. It can be kind of overinflated the story. Anything else come to mind about meeting clearly the world's big sweet tooth.
Well, yeah. I mean, remember we talked about cocoa shortages, and we talked about, of course, there are human rights challenges in the
Right.
candy supply chain, and Africa, some countries in Africa, took some hard steps against Switzerland, which is where I can verify you get the best candy
Mm,
chocolate in the world, literally in the world. Wow.
mm.
But so they're, I mean, they're not without its challenges, but they seem to have worked hard to overcome that. And we know, that many companies are very, very conscious of that, and trying to overcome both the demand and the human rights challenges in the supply chain there.
Yeah.
So impressive, honestly. After this was the second year that the candy makers said they would not hit their numbers. So for them to have hit, at least for Hershey's, to have hit their production numbers is very impressive. I mean, it took an incredible effort.
Mm. Yeah, it's a good point. I was trying to, as you were sharing that, I was trying to Google the sugar market, because I think one of the last times we talked about candy, we talked about sugar supply and prices and access, for that matter, globally.
Yeah.
All right. Well, folks, check out, and we've dropped, as always, don't take our word for it.
Mm.
Take some of our word for it.
I
But
see a Milky Way midnight in that, way back up under
gonna,
that Three Musketeers there.
yes, right here, right.
Yeah.
Folks, we have dropped a link to each of these articles there in the chat, and y'all can check it out and let us know what you think. And hey, by the way, before we wrap here, if y'all want to do what old mom did and share some of her favorite candies, y'all let us know what candy you are looking forward to
Great
getting
idea.
here come the Halloween season. So all I can say is don't leave me with a bag of Kit Kats, Greg. Please don't leave me
Ooh.
with a bag of Kit Kats, man. All right.
Yeah. So there were a horde of guys standing around the little candy bucket in the club, and those dudes loved Kit Kats. I'm curious if I'm sure we have somebody from India here on the show. I'm curious if Kit Kats are disproportionately um, popular in India, because these were
Huh.
probably 6 out of 10 of these guys were from India, and man, they were pounding the Kit Kats. One guy in particular, of course, the small, skinny guy, right, is the guy who can just pound all the
Right.
candy that he wants, and he's fine. So yeah,
Uh,
it made me curious. I meant to ask them, but the game was too compelling. So not really. It
uh,
was terrible. It was a blowout.
all right. Well, folks, if you love Halloween, hopefully y'all have a wonderful Halloween. Of course, we'll have a couple shows between now and then to get you there. But as I think this is Amanda says, you got to get the candy the day before Halloween if we want to have enough left to actually hand out to trick or treaters. I guess that's how it works. All right. So, Greg, as we are prepared to give folks a few extra minutes of their busy Mondays back, anything else on your plate, on your to-do list that you want to posit in people's minds here today before I wrap us up?
There's just one thing that I'm curious about, and I'd love to get people's thoughts on it. It doesn't have to be here, but I'll put it out there, and maybe if you come back to another show this week, share with us or share right here. But so the Scope 3 regulations, all of the carbon regulations, where companies are responsible for other companies' emissions now. I wonder how companies are tackling that these days, because I was thinking about how sort of politically charged that has become here in the US, where some people think it's implausible to be both sustainable and profitable. And yet countries all over the world don't care,
Mm,
and are imposing those same kind of things, not just on sustainability, but also on human rights. Germany
mm,
has a huge issue, kind of like U.S. Customs and Border Patrol does, where if you can't prove your product was not made with slave labor, it can't enter the country.
mm,
And I'm curious how companies are dealing with those challenges day to day,
mm.
because here in the States, it almost feels like people are kind of pulling back as the obviousness of consumer spending is slowing and other impacts. I mean, are showing an obvious slowing of the economy, or at least of economic growth. You can see companies kind of pulling back from this, or at least they're not. I wouldn't say pulling back. They're not being so outwardly effusive about
Mm,
ESG type issues. I hope that's not the case, because I'm 100% convinced that you can be both more profitable and more ethical in
right.
your supply chain. But I'm curious if anybody else is seeing anything like that. If the talk around your company, which doesn't have to be named, or or other companies or other people that you talk to, if you're seeing kind of that pullback from these sort of ESG type discussions. Have
Mm.
you seen anything you would call indicative, or a trend, or anything like that, Scott?
No, no, I have not. I think, to your point, what I have seen as cyber, as economic, as other
Mm,
concerns, in this ongoing cycle we're in, start to really dominate a lot of the space between executives' ears. It seems like, and I've seen it reported on, where actual polling and surveys have taken as they try to quantify, some of these anecdotal observations many of us, like you are, have. It seems like that we have seen a deprioritization of many ESG initiatives, or even spending. I saw one report. So
mm.
I much like Greg, I'd welcome y'all's thoughts, what you're seeing, whether it's in your company or your suppliers or your customers, or what you're seeing out in the marketplace. And you know what, folks, there's a variety of different ways beyond our shows. If you want to shoot us a note via, LinkedIn or email, or you can also, Greg, we hadn't pushed this out lately. I think folks can still submit an audio message on our website, if I'm not mistaken, Greg.
Well, we also have insiders, supply chain now insiders on LinkedIn, um, where you can post in there. I'd be interested to see, or I mean, just tag us in a post of your own, or message directly. Just be prepared to wait. I'm sorry. Um,
uh,
right?
Lots of ways.
Or hit us up on Twitter.
That's right.
Gregory S. White on Twitter.
That'd be
Scott
great.
W. Luton. Is that you?
I
At
think
Scott W. Luton?
you got it on
Yeah.
X now, I guess, to be official.
X. Sorry. Dang. Yeah.
Isn't that strange? All right, folks.
X is one of the oldest companies of the internet era. Did you know that?
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah.
How about that?
It was before PayPal, believe it or not.
Okay.
How about
News
that?
to me.
Yeah.
I did see on the Morning Brew this morning, one of my favorite reads, that Disney is celebrating, I guess, its 100th anniversary, if I
Yeah.
read that right.
Yep.
So it becomes one of the handful of companies that navigated. I mean, think about to outlast 100 years. You got past World War II. You got past, obviously, and think about all the
Great
different things.
Depression.
Yes, that you had to
Right.
navigate. So congrats to
The
the
60s.
team. Yeah.
Yeah. Britney Spears.
Oh, the list goes on and
Right.
on and on. All right. So, folks, thanks for showing up here today. Thanks for dropping some of your comments. Big thanks to Amanda and Catherine back behind the scenes. If you're listening to this replay, hey, join us live. And if you're joining us live here today, don't forget to like, subscribe, share, you name it. And also, don't forget to reach out if you got some things you want to share, perspective, observations related to Greg's last point there. Reach out. We'd love to engage with you. Okay, Greg, a
We're going to
pleasure.
hear from Gino. I guarantee it.
That's right.
Guarantee.
And he may put a beat behind it, because Gino is a rock and roll drummer, if you recall.
Oh my gosh. They are having a big songwriter festival in Muscle Shoals, which is up by where Gino lives, Florence, Alabama.
Okay. Well, we might see him in action. Who knows?
Yeah, you might
Greg.
see me in action there.
Okay. Legendary Muscle Shoals. Greg, always a pleasure to knock out the buzz
Likewise,
with you.
thank you.
Every Monday, 12 noon Eastern time, live. Folks, thanks for being here. Hey, pull
Yes.
something, pull one nugget or one little candy thought aside and do
Oh.
something with it, right? A little kiss or a little Reese's cup or whatever. Hey,
Yeah.
whatever it is. But kidding aside, it's about action. It's about taking action, deeds, not words. And you know what? You might want to think twice really about going out of your way to do good things for other folks right now. There's a lot of folks hurting out there. So
Mhm.
now let's double down on the challenge we share at the end of each and every show on behalf of the entire team here at Supply Chain Now. Scott Luton challenging you to do good, to give forward, and to be the change that's needed. And we'll see you next time right back here at Supply Chain Now. Thanks, everybody.